Good morning, everybody. So today we're going to do social studies with me since Miss Stockwell is out on her honeymoon. So you'll be doing it with me all week. And we are going to be using the textbook, Your Land, My Land from the Tennessee History for Kids. And our first chapter today is about decades and centuries. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so that you can see the text with me. Okay, so here is the book. It is already in your Google Drive, okay? So you're gonna open it with Cami because there are some questions at the end of this chapter that we're gonna go over together. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller so we can see the whole page at one time. There we go. So this is the cover of the book. And look at the cover. What do you see on the cover of the book? I see the state flag of Tennessee, and I see a lot of people who are dressed in like American attire, like they have feathers in their hair and they have on different kinds of American outfits. I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're Native American outfits. I see the American flag over here in the corner. Okay, so this makes me think this is some kind of Native American celebration. And on this flag says the Cherokee Nation. So that's probably for the Cherokee tribe in Tennessee. All right, so that's the cover. And then here's the first page. It's just an advertisement. All right, and here is our table of contents. And it says, Tennessee History for Kids was started in 2004 to help students, teachers, and parents with teach Tennessee history, civics, and geography. We use booklets, posters, videos, email alerts, training cards, and teacher training to do this. Our website is www.tennesseehistoryforkids.org, and I'll take you to that website before class is over because there's all kinds of really cool videos and things that you can watch. Let's see. We focus on meeting the standards approved by the Tennessee Board of Education, but our goal is to turn kids into history buffs. This booklet targets second grade classrooms and covers the social studies standards, which go into effect in 2019-2020, so here. It was written and researched by me, not me, the person writing this, with the help of teachers Elizabeth Lovelace of Haywood County, Britton Harris of Hamilton County, Laura Tarpley of Rutherford County, and Monica Ingham of Davidson County. Okay, so our table of contents. The first chapter, chapter 1, is called Decades and Centuries, and it starts on page 2. Okay, so let's look at the first page. Okay, it says, this photo was taken in the last decade, but the sign indicates that the church was started 2 centuries ago. Well, let's get a close-up look at that sign. It says Free Hills Church of Christ, established in 1816. That's what it looks like it says to me, 1816. That was over 200 years ago because this is 2020, 204 years ago. All right, chapter 1, Decades and Centuries. Every day, it is important to know the day of the week, the month of the year, and the date of the month. However, in social studies class, we will often talk about periods of time that are larger than these. A period 10 years in length is called a decade. A period 100 years in length is called a century. The words decade and century can be used to refer to any 10 or 100 year time period. A person might say that they haven't seen someone in more than a decade. That means that they haven't seen them in more than 10 years. You might hear someone on TV say a natural disaster was the worst one to hit in more than a century. That means it is the worst natural disaster in more than 100 years. As you learn more about social studies and grow older, you will use your knowledge of years, decades, and centuries to describe when events happen. For example, a year ago, you were in first grade. 2 years ago, you were in kindergarten. When you get to the fourth grade, you will have been alive for about a decade. So how can you tell that this photo was taken more than a century ago? So let's look at this photo. How can we tell that this was taken 100 years ago or more? What's different about this photo than what you would normally see on a street today? Well, just looking at it, I can tell that there's a horse. There's horses pulling a cart. We don't usually see those on the street today very often unless it's like a special thing. But this looks like it's common, okay? So we could tell that this is more than 100 years ago because this is not something that happens very often today. Okay. Donald Trump became president of the United States in 2017, which was a couple of years ago. Barack Obama became president in 2009, which was about a decade ago. World War I took place between 1914 and 1918. That was about a century ago. Remember, a century is 100 years. The U.S. Constitution was written in 1787. That was more than 2 centuries ago, so more than 200 years. So how can you tell that this photo was taken more than a century ago? Well, their clothes are a big giveaway, okay? These are older type clothes. This little guy's barefoot, okay? They are pulling around. Look really carefully. Let's zoom in on this. What do you think this is right here? It's a block of ice because more than 100 years ago, they did not have refrigerators. So they had to cool their things in what was called an ice box. And they would put these big chunks of ice in the box, and that would help keep their things cold. They're also pulling like a little type of wagon too. Okay, so our questions for today. What is the name of a period of time 10 years in length? Well, let's go back. I'm going to highlight the answer. We're going to go back and find the period of time 10 years in length. Oh, here it is. A period of 10 years in length is called a decade. It's a decade. So we need to go back to our question here, put in a text box, and word. Well, it is a decade. Try to make a complete sentence, okay, guys? What is the name of a period of time in 100 years in length? Let's go back. I know we saw it. It's the same place. A period 100 years in length is called a century. So we need to write that one here. It is a century. So I spelled that wrong. It's a century. Okay. So those are the 2 questions that we can answer together, okay? The third question, what are some things that have happened to your family in the last decade? Okay, that's something that you and your family members have to discuss and then answer together. I can say for my family in the last decade, I had my daughter. She's only 9, so that was in the last decade. My nephew was born. That was in the last decade. So there's some things that happened in my family. What is something important that happened in the world during the past decade? Ooh, There's a big thing going on right now. The coronavirus is a big thing that's happening in the world. There's all kinds of stuff that I could think of. Notre Dame caught on fire. That happened in France. There's all kinds of things going on around the world that you could talk about with that one. So you're going to talk about that one with your family and then answer that question together. And number 5, what is something important that happened more than a century ago? So more than 100 years. Well, we talked about one up here. World War I took place between 1914 and 1918. That was a really big deal that happened over 100 years ago. The Civil War in America happened over 100 years ago. The U.S. Constitution was written over 100 years ago. The United States became a country over 100 years ago. So those are 3 important things that you could talk about. So you're going to answer questions 3, 4, and 5 all on your own. You're going to talk about it with your family first, and then you're going to type out your answers in the text box. Okay? So that is your lesson for today. It was short, right? But tomorrow we're going to do 2. And chapter 2 is about the globe. So that'll be fun. We might do chapter 2 and 3 because they're all kind of short. We might do 2 and 3 tomorrow. We'll see. All right. So make sure you get those done. Oh, and tomorrow activity. I think it's tomorrow. Or is it chapter 3? No, it's chapter 4. Chapter 4 has a really fun activity. All right. So we'll get to that this week. All right. And you guys have a great day. Get your questions answered, and I will see you later. Bye, guys.